What's up? Good evening. I'm him, and today it is Sunday, March 2nd. Time is going by fast. It feels like this day it hasn't even started, really. I feel like I should get more accomplished. I did go out and film some footage of my motorcycle, so that video will be edited soon. In fact, I may start that first. We'll see how I feel. Went on a long walk with me and the dog first time, and then I went out again and met the son of one of my neighbors. Um, yeah, had a long conversation with him about life and what's going on. He's much older than me. His father's 90, I think 90 something, between 90 and 95. I'm not really sure. I think this guy is probably either my mom's age or maybe slightly younger. So like 50, late 50s, 60s. Yeah, it's been interesting talking to older folks around my neighborhood. Um, you know, they've been here for a while. They've seen a lot of things, and none of them have a very positive outlook on the future. And they all see some of the issues that are going on. And, we have conversations about what's going on. So, yeah, I'm going to be going over some videos. And then maybe at some point I'll switch gears and start editing my own videos, maybe. But I want to show one of the photos that I took. Oops, let me get some things fixed up right quick. All right, so, we're going to show a picture of, I was out there taking pictures of his truck, actually. So I want to show some of those. So here's the truck, and it immediately caught my attention because my grandfather has this truck. Well, he's not here anymore, but the truck is still here. He has one. His is two-tone. It's red and white. This one's just red. So I was looking at it. I was like, oh, man, I like this truck. He's like, you want to buy it? I'm like, actually. Like, after this Tesla, I'm going away from the Tesla. Here's a full shot of it. And then I think I have a full side profile shot of it. Looks pretty cool, I think. I like this truck a lot. And here is the front. So I was walking my dog Roscoe, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this truck is dope. So after I took him back, I went to go check to see if it was still there with my camera. And fortunately, it was. So, yeah. All right. I guess I'll go ahead and I'm not really in a rush. I'll have to get started now. What I'll do first is offload some footage. I have footage that I just captured. So we'll go ahead and throw this on here. We'll say Street Fighter SFV4S. It's not really a review. Impressions. How about that? We'll call it impressions. Look at some of the footage, and then maybe I'll start after there are a few more folks around, and greetings have been made. All right, let me get the camera. By the way, there's still going to be some content coming out fairly soon on this A1 Mark II. Don't feel like I need to rush on it because, in all honesty, it's basically the same as the previous generation A1. So, yeah, I haven't really felt like I need to rush this. And they're still having trouble meeting demand for it. I don't even think it's that much demand, but they're having trouble with it. So I don't intend for a lot of people to start getting it anytime soon because I've had it for 3 months and I haven't seen much content on it. Which could just be a factor of nobody's interested in the camera. That it could be that. You know, let's be real. Okay, what is this? Is this it? All right, nope. There we go. And I also have footage on my mic. Also, let me go ahead and do some management here. We'll go ahead and put media, and then we'll say audio. And this is, what kind of mic is this? This is the DJI mic. All right, I'll create another folder for video. And there is no B-roll or any of that, so this is going to be easy. Move this over here. I don't think I'm going to worry about getting the audio. Actually, no. There is no reason for me to put it off. I'll just do it now. All right, that's easy. It's only 2 clips. Dump that in. Wow, these CF Express cards are amazing. I need to learn about why they're so fast and why SD cards are so slow. Doesn't make any sense. All right, let's.
Mic sync, mic sync.
I have to sync my mic because I'm using a mic.
Carbon fiber right.
It's really loud.
Got these tank grips right here from Ducati.
That was weird. Why did I do that?
Mic sync, mic sync. These not levers. What do you call these? Grips. Grip. Tried it for a little. And so
I had to open up my aperture wide open because it got dark extra fast. By the time I got down and started recording, got everything set up and started recording, the light, like clouds were coming. It got cold. I was like, oh my gosh. I didn't even take off my jacket. I was planning to take off my jacket. I'm glad I wore it. I only went right down the street. I didn't really do much. Yeah, so that's a bike. So it looks like it works.
Go ahead and get one.
Ah, I could fit in the frame. Okay, I wasn't sure. I sat down because I wasn't sure if I could be in the frame. I don't have anyone to record me, so I don't actually know, whether or not. Actually, I'm a little too tall if I walk too far in front of the bike, like right here. I'm not really all the way in the frame. I can go back, I can do this again. It's fine. Now I know. All right, yeah, looks good to me. Move on. So I've done that part, so I'm done with that. Let's go on and do some video watching. So this video that I'm going to watch first was shared by someone else. So we're going to start with that one. This is a video by Jordan Peterson, Why the Elites Went Hard Left. So let's get into it.
Do you have any sense of why it was the progressive ideas, so to speak, that
Wait a minute.
emerged to dominate?
Like, what's going on here? When was this released? This was released 13 days ago. Okay. All right. Well, it's on Liberty Vault, and the title of the video is Jordan Peterson: Why the Elites Went Hard Left. If you want to go and like it later, I would encourage that. I'll go ahead and get started. Let me go ahead and give it a like because I am watching it here. And let's get
Do you
into it.
have any sense of why it was the progressive ideas, so to speak, that emerged to dominate the universities? Like I can't put those two things together. Is it that what progressive ideas actually do, as Rob Henderson might indicate, is the progressive ideology nothing but the proclivity of the privileged elite to cover themselves in unearned moral glory? And is the temptation so profound that that's the natural course of things? Like, because you might say, well, why wasn't the progressive movement working class? Or why was the elite movement towards moral status, virtue signaling? Why did that take this leftist twist? And I can't quite put those things together. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about that.
Well, I think over the last 50 years, my view is that the nature of status fundamentally changed. It moved away from wealth and resource into the realm of ideology and belief. And that became a key indicator for the elite class to accrue status, to say, actually, it's not just that I've got a butler, I've got a house, I've got wealth, I've got money. It's that, I know the vocabulary of radical progressivism. I know what white privilege means, and I know what white guilt means, and I'm going to latch onto this sacred religion and ensure other people have to hear the word and do the work. I think that's part of it.
Okay.
But I think also yeah.
Well, okay, so
He did just say something. I gotta latch on to this idea of white privilege, which, when you think a little bit more deeply about that, makes very little sense. When you look at the globe, the world population, white people make up a small percentage of that. They're concentrated in predominantly two continents, Europe and North America. And if you look at the complete population of Europe and North America, it's under a billion. And when I say America, I'm talking about North America, like all of North America, the United States, Canada, Mexico. I'm going to throw in Central America into that too. So places like Costa Rica, Nicaragua, all that kind of stuff. And also some of the islands. If there are 8 billion people on Earth and the populations of these two continents are about 1 billion, and that's including people who look like me, and I'm not white. What that tells me is that they are a minority in the world. And this idea that the civilizations and the countries that they've built alongside, some others, that for whatever reason that they aren't allowed to have a privilege in their home, that's rich. I'm not that unfamiliar with history. And while, yes, it is true that there were some white people who held slaves here in America, the truth is the vast majority of them didn't. Most people were not rich enough to own slaves. And then there's also this little issue of a war that was fought. It's our country's most bloody war. The Civil War. Just think about who fought and died for that. Yes, there were some slaves who did it, but it was majority white people fighting against themselves over that issue. And state rights, which was centered around that issue. And it's not lost on me that there are not that many places on earth where a minority population is granted rights that make them equal to the majority. I can't think of any other country in history that's done that. Well, I can, but they're all in the West. You know, places like Britain or the United Kingdom. Maybe I'll call it the United Kingdom. So this idea that we have all these people who aren't from here, who don't share our values, who are coming here and saying that they want to destroy this country and death to America and all that kind of crap. And then we have the progeny of slaves. I don't really care about the other people. Let's be real. There's a reason why America is focused on black and white. To have so many of people who look like me to say, yeah, this is privilege and we want to destroy them, that it just doesn't make sense. It's a naive assumption that you have to say, let me destroy something that's been working pretty well for most of us. And then what? What do you replace it with? That's the thing that most people don't think about. Most people are. I have this philosophy that evil can only destroy. That's all it does. It never builds anything. And I think there are evil forces at work here these days. And it's been corrupting not only, people who are my age, but also our youth. And we're starting to see it in our society where we're more atomized than ever. There are people who don't want to talk to one another for whatever reason. We have people in this country who think that other citizens in this country are their enemies. How retarded can you be? I guess the answer is you could be very retarded. We have a lot of those types of people in our country now. But yeah, it's unfortunate that nobody, well, I can't say nobody, but a majority of people have allowed this type of thing to happen, like this idea of white guilt, and they're not calling out racism when they see it. Racism is racism. I don't care if you are a minority and you think you can't be racist. You can be a racist, you bigot. And that's what we've seen. And that concerns me as a minority in this country, because it's not lost on me that at any point, the people who granted us rights can take them away. I'm not that silly to understand, to not understand that. And I think that there's been a lot of goodwill lost. So as things start to deteriorate further here in our country, honestly, I can't blame people who look like them for not giving a shit about people who look like me, even though I wouldn't want that to be the case. Which is part of the reason why I'm going to start speaking out on these types of things, because it needs to stop. And I think that these people need to understand that there are people who see what's happening to them and they're not for it.
Let's imagine, okay, that's a good hypothesis. So let's imagine this. Let's say, look, when I was at Harvard in the 90s, I taught there in the 90s, that place was firing on all cylinders. And that was the same at McGill when I trained there as a clinical psychologist. I really liked being at McGill. I had excellent compatriots there, and the education I received by and large was extremely high quality, especially on the research side. And then when I went to Boston and taught at Harvard, I thought the undergraduates were great. I had excellent graduate students. The administrators served the faculty, particularly the senior faculty. The senior faculty were the smartest and most well-informed people I'd ever met by a lot. And everyone was devoted to their work to the point where we had very short faculty meetings because everyone wanted to get back to their lab. It was really good. Okay, so now imagine that we had a period of time after World War II where the elite universities, the high quality universities, really were high quality. They were merit based and high quality, and they set up a reputation system that was valid. Okay, now imagine that the cluster B psychopaths and the narcissists and the histrionic anti-merit types invaded those institutions that had developed this new currency of status that you referred to, which would be educational accreditation, but it was valid. Well, now you can game it.
You know what?
Now you can game it
He's saying something that I noticed last night. It seems that people equate education with status, which is baffling to me. If you're poor, I don't care if you're educated. It's like you're not the same status. But for whatever reason, we have a whole cohort of people who are using education as status. And not only that, they're trying to use that and tell others that they are better than them. They're superior because they have an education. I noticed these types of things happening when I was in school. And part of the reason why I don't have any interest in finishing my degree from one of the schools that he just said that he taught at during the 90s is that I realized that I'm not like these people. I'm like, yeah, you know, Harvard is a great school, I suppose, but I couldn't tell based off of the students who I was interacting with. And I'm not saying that all students were not, were not great, but there were a lot who were just, I'm like, how are you here? Or even why are you here? It's kind of sad because it cheapens the degree for everyone else. So let's say that you are someone who worked your ass off to get into school, and you go to a really well-renowned school, and you complete your course of study and you get your degree. Great. Well, the thing about degrees is that their value is based on the people who have that degree, who work in the workforce, as well as who work within politics and who start businesses. It's based off of what they go out and accomplish. That's what gives a degree its value. It's, oh, well, a bunch of presidents went to this school, or a bunch of finance ministers of different countries went to this school. That's what gives the degree from that school its weight. Now, when you start having a bunch of people who go on to accomplish jack shit, who can't even read a book, well, all of a sudden, the value of that degree from that institution goes down, and it doesn't go down just for the people who recently got it. It goes down for everyone. I think that's why when you go to school, like your alma mater is kind of a big deal. It's that you represent the school that you go to. And if you value your school and your, the institution that you went to, and you want others who come behind you to succeed, it's incumbent on you to go out into the world and show others that, people from this school are cut from a different cloth. But I think a lot of that has been lost. And I guess I shouldn't even say I think, because not long ago, I think it was within a year or two, maybe 3 years ago, I don't know. My sense of time is distorted. But I think that a lot of corporations no longer require a degree as a prerequisite to getting a job there. That should tell you something. That should worry some people, especially the people who, they rely on a degree to signal that they are, that they can do something. Because, they don't have anything else to prove that, hey, no, I actually am someone who can do something. It's going to make things harder. And it is sad.
been established. And I really see that this happened at Harvard, for example, with the promotion, for example, of Gay to the position of president. It's like, what the hell was going on with that? She didn't have.
He's talking about he's talking about the woman who got put as the head of oh gosh, I forgot her first name. Harvard Gay. This person, Claudine, her. From a lot of accounts of folks who are familiar with her work, she did not deserve to be the president of this school. She was put in place because of her complexion and her gender. And while, there are some people who are, in my mind, who are short-sighted, who would be like, oh, this is great. We finally have someone who's black at Harvard. Great. I think that if you're focusing on someone's skin color, you're stupid. You're focused on the wrong thing. However, I understand that people are going to focus on skin color regardless, which is why it's even more important that if you are going to put someone in that kind of a position, they need to be someone who deserves that position, because there are going to be people who are going to be out there chirping, who are going to be like, why is this person there? In this case, they put this person there when even me, I'm like, why are they putting this person there? And now what this does is that it basically closes the door for future people who are her complexion and or her gender. And that should worry you. Just putting someone in place and saying, oh, hee ha ha, yes, this is great. What about the long-term implications of you put someone there who doesn't deserve it, and now in the future, everybody else has to live under that shadow? It's kind of like with affirmative action. And I'm not saying I'm for or against it. I'm just saying that, when it existed, that's always something that people would ask. I remember when I was in school, some people would think that I'm only there because of affirmative action and not because I scored in the top 98th percentile on the SAT and that I did really, really well in high school. So you always gotta, you're basically fighting the narrative on top of just trying to do your stuff. So it's, everything comes with unforeseen consequences, these second, third order consequences. And I'm not saying that we can have a world in which we don't have to deal with these things. Everything that's done with good intention is necessarily going to have something that may not be so great that comes along with it. That's just life. Everything is trade-offs, right? Anyway, let's go on. Let's keep listening.
Have the academic credentials to be hired at a second rate, as a professor in a second rate department. So imagine that the university's built up a reputation, a real, they were really markers of credibility, and then the system got gamed. Maybe that's the right explanation. Well, and now you could place. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, just something on that. I think something else happened too, though, and ultimately, it depends on whether you view the radical progressive takeover, which I personally think has peaked. I think it's now it's in retreat. I think Trump has got the woke ideology, whatever your favorite term. I think it's on the back foot. But if you ask yourself, well, why did it emerge? I think there are those who say it is a kind of radicalization of cultural Marxism and so on. But there are those, Eric Kaufman among others, who I'm persuaded by, who say, no, actually, this is a radicalization of liberalism. Like, this isn't cultural Marxism. This is the inevitable extension of liberalism, which became so consumed with minority rights and emotional harm that, particularly within universities, emotional safetyism, protecting minorities, racial, sexual, and gender minorities from harm.
First of all, I know that he's not framing it. He's just saying what he's been told. This idea that I need to be protected, that needs to stop. What that sounds like to me is that these people, not him per se, but people who think that way have a superiority complex. They think that they are above me and can protect me. Who the fuck are they? If anything, they need to be protected from me because I'm not weak like them. So this idea that, oh, we need to protect them. Well, you only protect those who are weak. And I'm not weak. And I refuse to believe that other people who look like me are weak. I would say it's quite the contrary. We go through a lot of adversity from an early age. That tends to make you stronger.
From perceived emotional harm was basically prioritized over the pursuit of truth, objective science, objective knowledge, and that just filtered through everything. And the moment the North Star became this notion of harm, of protecting people from harm, everything trickled down.
That's very feminine. That's why I say I think feminism it necessarily leads to that. That is this idea of nurture. Most of the people who are doing this are people who don't have their own children. Think about that. The go along, get along crew, they don't have their own children. They've been convinced that they need to go out and work or whatever. And that need to nurture is being misplaced, which is why I've said in the past, I think that feminism necessarily leads to tyranny because at its root, it's about nurturing. Maybe we need to get back to how things used to be, which is after a certain age, the kids get taken away from the nurturer and they go on to be taught how to be an actual adult, how to become a man, how to get shit done. Because what we have now isn't working. And if you think it's working, well, okay. I would like to know how your life is actually going. You know, if maybe society isn't falling apart around you. You know, maybe people aren't being led by emotional thinking. Emotional thinking is a dead giveaway to me. That is feminism. Because that's all they have is emotion. I'm not seeing logic come out of that group.
From that. Now, that's what I saw in universities. It's what I see in left and right in politics. This endless obsession with DEI, this endless obsession with anti-racism training, this endless obsession with apologizing for what happened 500 years ago. It is, I think, fundamentally this sacralization of minorities that is lying at the heart of this ideological revolution.
Okay, let me add another ugly dimension to that line of argumentation. And this is something, I haven't talked much about this publicly, but at least not in this context, but I think it's probably worth broaching it. So I did a research project in 2016, just before my academic career blew up, where we were looking at predictors of politically correct authoritarianism. First of all, we established that such a thing existed. All protestations to the progressive social psychologists to the contrary, there was a coherent set of left-wing authoritarian beliefs, and you could identify them statistically. And then the question was, what predicted them? Okay, we found three major predictors, and we had no a priori presumption about this.
I'm curious what he's going to say, but I'm going to throw out what I think. And I'd be curious to see how far I'm off. I think single female. I don't know if that's one or two. I'm going to just say that's two because that's really single females who are wealthy. Or how about this? Single females and wealthy people. Or relatively wealthy, middle class and up, like upper middle class and up. I don't know a third, but I think that's my prediction. I don't know what he's going to say. Let's see what he says.
The first predictor was low verbal intelligence.
Okay. Stupidity. Okay.
And so when you ask yourself, well, how could people be daft enough to believe such things? Well, one of the answers to that our research showed
you don't know the meaning of words.
People who swallowed those ideologies weren't that smart. And so they were very much likely to dominate those academic subdisciplines.
You know what? That actually makes sense, and here's why. Let's look at an IQ distribution curve for the USA. I don't want to look at that. Let's go here. Okay, so all normal curves, well, not all. Normal curves have some interesting things about them, all of them. no matter what you're measuring. They tend to have this trait right here where, you know, the middle, the mean is always in the middle, like that's 50%, you know, and then 50% is going to be below that and 50% is going to be above that, right? And this is an ideal normal, you know, distribution curve. Obviously you can have skew and all that kind of crap. Well, the average IQ here in America is 100, and it looks like it's a standard deviation of 15, just looking at this right here. So let's just say that an IQ of 100 is quite low, in my opinion. Just in my opinion. IQ of 100 is not that high. Most people, or half of the population, has an IQ of 100 and lower. Well, let's go to just a standard deviation above that, which in my opinion is still not that smart. This is saying that 68% of people are going to have an IQ 115 and lower. That's the majority. Even if you're someone who goes to college, what's most likely the case is that you're going to be in this group right here, this 115 range, which means that you're part of this group that he's talking about. It's just something, you know, just something to know. Something to know. IQ in America is going down, by the way. Just interesting.
That attracted the least cognitively able people. Okay, so it was a big predictor. The correlation between IQ and politically correct authoritarianism was higher than the correlation between cognitive ability, IQ, and grades. It was a whopping predictor.
Doesn't surprise me, yeah.
So that's bad enough. Here's the kicker, though.
Wait. He didn't say IQ. He said verb. All right, let me listen.
Cognitive ability, IQ, and grades. Correlation between IQ and those academic subdisciplines that attracted the least cognitively able people. Okay, so it was a big predictor. The correlation dominate just weren't that smart. Well, people who swallowed one of the answers to that our research showed was that, well, people who swallowed those ideologies weren't that smart.
Oh, he did say not that smart. Never mind. I thought he said like low verb. Let me listen.
And
again.
so they were very much likely to dominate those academic subdisciplines that attracted the least cognitively able people. Okay, so it was a big predictor. The correlation between IQ and politically correct authoritarianism was higher than the correlation between cognitive ability, IQ, and grades. It was a whopping predictor.
Doesn't surprise me.
Oh, that's interesting. Huh. Now, I would be curious to know, what are the fields of study these people normally went into? I have my thoughts, and there's nothing against, you know, all psychologists, but I think psychology is a big one. That it's fairly easy, low effort. I think business, marketing, communications, I think those are some as well. Because at least in my experience, that those are like the easy majors, and the people who did them weren't as smart at all. They didn't even come close to people who majored in mathematics or physics, the sciences, or engineering. I wonder if there's any data that shows what fields of study these people went into. If I had to guess, it's the fields of study that I just listed, but you know, I was already wrong. I said single female, and oh wait, no, he still has two more to go. I said wealthy and single female. He's only done one. Let's see.
So that's bad enough. Here's the kicker, though. There were two other major predictors, three actually. The first was being female.
I was going.
Oh shit! I was right, but he didn't say single. I said single female. What he said is more general. That's a bigger subset of people. Interesting. That's half of. Okay, all right.
Let's say that.
Yeah. The second was having a female temperament. That was an additional predictor.
Being feminine. Okay, so female or you're feminine. There are a lot of effeminate men these days. I don't even know if I should call them men because we don't have real rites of passage. No, I'm gonna call them men. They're males. But it's like, you know, a lot of us, and I'm saying us because it's me included, are raised by single parents. I'm gonna be honest. If you are a female, you don't know what the fuck it is to be a man or how to raise a man because you're a female. You live life on easy mode. Sorry, not sorry. So it's like, how the hell are you going to raise a man and you don't even know what it is? It's like you're not even close to what a man is. Even your idea of a man is flawed.
Over and above being female. The third was having ever taken a politically correct course. Okay, so now that, you know, you pointed out that this.
All right, I don't know what a politically correct course is. Let me correct course. Sis Harvard. I don't know if this is political science. I wonder if y'all know the history of political correctness and where did that come from? It came from the USSR, just FYI, during the Bolshevik Revolution, where people understood that there was the correct answer and then there was also the politically correct answer. And they used the word politically correct to indicate that it was not correct, but you had to say that so that you wouldn't die. You know, you wouldn't go to the gulags. And somehow we've adopted that into our lexicon here in America. It's interesting how many communist words we use here now. I don't know what a politically correct course is, so I'm just going to move on.
Ethos of harm avoidance, let's say, something like that, this protective ethos started to dominate. Well, no one has been courageous enough or foolhardy enough to broach the possibility that the reason for that is that the universities became dominated by not only women, this is even worse, I might as well go in all the way, childless women.
Oh, it's not exactly what I said. I said single, but childless, same difference. I keep saying nurturing. I'm like, this idea of nurturing, that's what it seems like. It's misplaced because they can't go and form families of their own because nobody wants them. Well, now they have to control others because that's effectively what nurturing is.
Yeah.
Right. And that's
well, like, actually, there are a couple of papers on that, Jordan. I'm sure you've seen. I think Corey Clark, and I've read a couple. I think showing basically the feminization of higher education over the last 50 years. But there's something else. Listening to you that just came into my mind. I don't know if you've read it. There's a book by a psychologist called Luke Conway that came out, I think, a year ago. Called Liberal Bullies. And what he has done, which is fascinating, is he's gone back and looked at all the old stuff on right-wing authoritarianism and the scales that they used comparing right-wing authoritarians with left-wing authoritarians. And of course, the old argument, this is, you know, going back 50 years of social science, was that you don't get left-wing authoritarians, you only get right-wing authoritarians.
Yeah, what a lie that
was.
Whoa.
Hold on, I have to pause there because that's the stupidest thing I've heard. And I'm not saying this. I think that somebody told them this and they're probably disagreeing with it too. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life because Mao Zedong, a leftist authoritarian, Lenin, leftist, Stalin, leftist, both authoritarian. Just off the top of my dome, I don't even I can come up with 3 just off the top. Whoever would say something that silly is ignorant of history.
Literature, right, has just been debunked because what Conway is saying, well, if you change the scales because they were measuring right-wing authoritarianism differently from left-wing authoritarianism, if you use the same scales on both, what you find is that so-called liberals are actually more prone to authoritarian impulses and tendencies than conservatives.
I don't even think you have to go that far. I like proof by contradiction. It's something that we do in computer science. It's a very effective method of proof because, well, it's the least work, really. It's effective, you know, it's very efficient as well. Where someone makes a claim. Well, this is an argumentation. I'm moving it towards argumentation. Logic is logic, no matter where you apply it. But let's say someone makes a claim. Well, all you have to do is come up with one instance in which that claim isn't true. Proof by contradiction. It's magnificent. It's like a short circuit. You don't have to go through all this other riffraff and all that. Nah, it's like, all right, well, you said this. Here is one example where what you just said doesn't apply. And of course, you know, they can be, oh, it doesn't, okay, well, here's another one, the same thing. And you just keep going. You can keep giving contradictions if you like, but you don't really need to do that.
And if anything explains the last 15 years in Western politics, the kind of great awakening, you know, all of the, you know, fanaticism and dogmatism that we saw around Black Lives Matter and the social justice movement, it's this take. You know, I read his book and I was like, there it is. So basically
I hate that movement. The fact that they called it Black Lives Matter, because I know some people, remember we just looked at that normal distribution curve. I know that there are some people who will understand that that movement and black people are separate things, you know, but the majority of people just are not capable of seeing that level of nuance. The only people who are capable of seeing that level of nuance are people who exist in the tells. Well, I shouldn't even say tells, the tell. Or people who may be, you know, like myself, and they understand. It's like, well, that has nothing to do with us. This is my issue, is tying things to race or ethnicity and all that kind of stuff, because like once a narrative is spun, whether you want to be a part of that narrative or not, you're going to be a part of that narrative because, well, let's just be honest, most people are dumb. And you know, it's easier for them to just say, all right, well, everything that looks like this is that. I stopped thinking here. They don't go beyond that and say, you know what, well, I do understand that not all black people are the same. They're not a monolith. And I can't expect other people to have my level of insight. So while I know that there are some white people who are a certain kind of way, I'm very cognizant of the fact that there are a lot of other white people who aren't like that. All right. And I can't lump them all together. There's this thing that we're told not to do. It's called don't overgeneralize. You know, another word for that is stereotyping. You know, sometimes stereotyping is useful. However, you should also understand that a stereotype is a generalization, and not everybody is going to fit within that generalization. I'm not saying it follows a normal curve, but let's just say that it is normally distributed. Okay, well, most people may be a part of that, but there's still going to be outliers, you know, who exist in the tail ends, and we don't know what those tail ends look like. Maybe the tail end is 30%. You would never know. But what you do know is that not everybody fits it, so you can't apply generalizations just willy-nilly. And you don't think about the fact that, you know, not everybody's going to fit into this label or this group.
Scientists were misleading everybody. I would say maybe they knew about it. Maybe they were just lying to people. And here we have evidence that if you identify as highly liberal, you are more prone to authoritarian impulses than conservatives.
Okay. So they were definitely at least lying by omission. Like, I got into the study of left-wing authoritarianism sort of sideways, because I'm a personality and clinical psychologist, not a social psychologist. And the people who studied right-wing authoritarianism, or authoritarianism, let's say, were social psychologists. And so then I had to master the social psychological literature. And I found, to my absolute bloody shock, what you just described, which was that for 60 years, the social psychologists essentially had insisted that there was no such thing as left-wing authoritarianism. And I thought, well, what do you mean there's no such thing as left-wing authoritarianism, for Christ's sake? Who the hell do you think Stalin was, and Mao?
Oh shit.
That's not left-wing
He's bringing them
murderous
up. He's bringing them up, yes. Also Lenin. He didn't mention him. But yeah, those two as well.
Authoritarianism, and that's why we did this research. But here's another thing that's horrible, and I don't know if Conway has dealt with this, and I didn't know about the book, and I will read it. See, the pattern of cancel culture is the same pattern as female antisocial behavior. So there's a literature on antisocial behavior that's sex typed. So antisocial males are violent. They're physically violent. And they're criminal for that regard, and they tend to get thrown in prison because of it, because we don't tolerate violent crime. White collar crime's not so bad. You can defund 1 million people out of their pension, but you don't want to mug someone. And I can understand that because people are afraid of being physically assaulted. But we definitely have a differential scale of justice when it comes to economic damage. Anyways, female antisocial types, they don't use physical aggression. They use gossip, reputation savaging, and like camouflaged aggression, right? And so you could imagine, this is a very ugly hypothesis, but there's no reason to assume that women are going to be any less pathological in their social behavior than men. It'll just take a different form.
Okay, I guess I didn't realize it would be that short. All right, well, yeah, that was interesting and enlightening, I suppose. All right, I'm moving on to the next thing. This is a completely different direction. I only played that one because someone shared it. So if you are in my Discord, I have a channel called After Hours Live. I prioritize watching videos, reacting to videos, talking about whatever videos that people share. And then beyond that, whatever people react to, like emoji react or whatever, I prioritize that as well. So I'm scrolling through to see if there are any others. If not, we'll just start from the top. All right, so this is going to be, actually, you know what? Yeah. We're going to do AI. So this is a video by the senior dev, How AI Ruined Software Development.
Developers almost fully delegate the coding to.
Oops, let's go to here. We'll give it a like. Yeah, it's the senior dev, How AI Ruined Software Development. And I'm gonna make this go faster. I forgot to do it earlier.
So this is how AI is ruining software engineering. First, by allowing companies to scale micromanagement and replacing assistance, what they promise, with surveillance. Second, by creating what we call metastatic code bases that are kind of zombie-like. And third, by leading to zero trust technical interviews, which feels more like FBI interrogating you actually than just applying for a job and trying to get a job. Let's dive into number one, micromanagement at scale. Well, just like this developer has noticed, many developers are realizing that their jobs are slowly becoming unbearable due to AI. In this case, this particular developer did not resign already because they have bills to pay or family to support, right? Because what's happening? Well, their micromanaging CEO is passing code from the GitHub repo and telling them, hey, why did you guys did not came up with that already? And the problem is that 50% of the suggestions that the CEO is recommending are actually hallucinations, as you can imagine. But the overall result of this is that for them, logging into Slack each morning seriously wants to make them puke. Again, this is
my take on AI in coding environments is that it's mostly trash. I'm not impressed to date. Yes, it can do things that, that already exist, problems already solved, but why are people wasting their time solving solved problems? That's just stupidity in my opinion. So if you're doing something that's novel, I don't see how AI is truly going to help you. Now, yes, it may be great for junior level developers who don't know much, but I think the more senior you become, the less useful AI is. Now, that's not to say that it will not improve, because maybe it will, but I don't believe that there is some law of nature that things have to continually improve. I don't believe that. I have yet to see evidence that that is true. So until I see evidence that that is true, I'm going to assume that it's not true, that there is no law that requires that things continually improve. The only law that I recognize that I've seen empirical evidence of is thermodynamic laws. Like we tend to go towards chaos. That's the natural order of things. High entropy.
It's not a specific episode, but we've seen this happening in the developer teams of the developers we coach, and this is starting to become a very common scenario. So what's actually this micromanagement at scale all about? Well, managers are using AI to double guess developers' work and micromanage, and it's not managers only, it's all kind of stakeholders. It can be product managers, it can be CEO.
I love how he said double guess. I would have said second guess. I think double guess is the same as second guessing. And I'm assuming that. I actually don't know. I've never heard double guess. But if one of you all knows, let me know. I've never seen it, but maybe that's the same as second guess.
As you've seen in that case. Also, we've seen next generation developer tracking, aka surveillance software that's being released, which results in software engineering becoming some kind of an assembly line job, right? Instead of this creative problem solving, you suddenly have all these tools that were supposed to support you, but right now they are becoming constraints and kind of they're becoming control tools, which creates an even bigger disconnect between what we call the programming class, right? The software engineers, and the business class, the stakeholders on the other side.
I understand this right here because I'm like, yes, I'm an engineer, but I also kind of sometimes I'm kind of I'm in between. Like I think both ways, and one thing that I understand is that non-creative people will never understand creative people. They assume that they could manage or they could systematize or add process around creativity. And they think that because, well, they don't understand it because they don't have it themselves. You wouldn't believe how many people don't understand just how creative programming and software engineering and just engineering in general is. The thing is that I think that there's been this infatuation with the word science over the years, where people think that science is the ultimate, like the ultimate level, the ultimate thing to strive for, to make everything scientific, which is in a sense to make everything repeatable. But art, in my opinion, is the highest level that we should strive for, because art is what happens when there are no rules. I mean, yes, you can have rules and all that, but like the art is the creativity. It's the understanding that the world is not theoretical. We have all these models, and I'm not just talking about in AI. I'm talking about in general. Like we have economic models, we have business models, we have models of equations. We have like all these types of models, but models don't encapsulate all information. They are simplified because the world is very complex. And the way that we go about reasoning about the world is by removing as much stuff as we can and focusing on models. Models are just representative. They're not actually real. It's just something that we can use, that we can think about, because it's easier dealing with a model than reality. So with art, that's the acceptance that the model is just a model. That doesn't encapsulate everything. We often say in the real world, X, Y, and Z happens. It's like, yeah, your book says what it says, but your book doesn't take into account all of the things that are actually happening, because it can't. You can't teach that, right? So I think that's part of the problem, is that you have people trying to manage things that they don't understand, and they want so desperately for it to be scientific or something that's, like they say, an assembly line, but it's not. And I think we're going to start to see the consequences of these things in a few years. Consequences, unfortunately, in the real world, they lag behind. Sometimes it takes 5 years. That's a quick turnaround. But other times it takes a generation or two before we start to understand the true consequences of what we're doing. I wonder how long we're going to see it here, because everything is accelerating now. So maybe we'll start to see the consequences of these actions happening sooner rather than later.
Sides. And developers are being seen as a redundant cost center, which is nothing new. But what's happening is that this generative AI technology, it's actually promising a full elimination of the developer for the first time in history. Yeah, so we already had our Jira burn charts and sprint metrics and all these dailies that feel kind of, constraining you into this assembly line kind of routine. When you wake up, you look at Jira and you try to make sure that you are not on already in any of those metrics. But we've seen a lot of new software being developed on top of tools like Jira, where they can see exactly how many lines you've committed and estimate the quality of your code in a very...
That's the stupidest thing. I don't know how many times we have to say this, but the amount of lines of code that are committed doesn't say anything. That's easily gamed. Someone like me can easily commit a shit ton of lines of code, because it's like, okay, well, instead of doing something efficiently, I'll do something in a way that I know a junior would do it. It's going to be a lot of lines of code. It maybe will accomplish the thing, but it's going to be a lot of lines of code. So if we're going to measure lines of code, well, smart people will just give you a lot of lines of code. That's not the thing that we should be worried about. But, it seems like for whatever reason, all of the engineering principles and techniques and, engineering managers who say this is what we should be doing, like, it seems like they have been ignored for the past 40 or 50 years. And every so often we get a new crop of MBAs who are just like, oh no, these people who actually know how to do the thing that I don't understand, no, they're wrong. People who've never built shit in their life. Let's just be clear. An MBA is someone who goes to business school because they couldn't go and create their own business. I have very little respect for them. Not all the time, but most times.
Arbitrary way. So it's really getting next level. And I think you really stressed point number 4, where it's always a good idea to move as a developer towards business or company where you are not seen as a cost center, but rather as an asset, where they see the relationship with you as a partnership rather than a transaction. And that's where you'll do your best work because you'll be appreciated. And that's where you'll also get better pay. Yeah, Bogdan, you're a software engineer. If you had to work in this kind of environment, how would you feel about it? Well, Dragoș, as you mentioned, micromanagement, it's nothing new. I had CEOs and product managers questioning my estimates in the past, and now they're even questioning the solution itself, the code. Of course, you feel very disrespected, you feel very anxious, and there's this whole feeling of I need to prove my worth all the time. So you're always showing up to work, trying to do your best, which never feels like enough. This micromanagement and disregard towards developer work, it's nothing new. And I think the biggest problem is the lack of motivation.
What do you mean? I'm sorry. I'm seeing it late. What sounds like a market opportunity?
Anything done. You really apply the carrot and the stick here, but you only have the stick. And it's in the form of AI plugins to Jira, AI generating or reviewing your PRs, or snippets of AI generated code that come to you and that you have to implement from all those stakeholders. So what can you do about it as a software engineer working in a team where you're being micromanaged using AI? Well, first of all, you got to understand your own value. And you got to understand that AI can write code, but it cannot actually build software. Exactly, there. So we see AI tools generating a lot of code, but they are very far away from having workable code. They are very far away from finding the right solutions. The illusion of AI generated code, it's sort of a very good illusion because when you query these tools, the suggestions you get on the surface are extremely good, but very few people talk about the effect of doing this at scale. And we are very...
No, here's what I think. I think people are impressed by a bunch of words. I don't think people are actually reading the words that are being spat out. And maybe that's where the gap is for me, is because I actually read what it's saying and I'm not impressed. I've even seen some people and how they use AI. It just spits out a bunch of stuff and they don't really read any of it. They kind of just, oh yeah, this is wild. It's a lot of stuff. It's like, but did you read it? Saying, like, not all of us are impressed by a bunch of words on the screen. In fact, it's the opposite for me. One of the things I strive to do when I'm writing is to be as concise as possible, to be able to get my message across in as few words as possible. that doesn't mean I'm going to go to the point where I'm just like overly terse, but you know, just making sure that every sentence drives to some point that I'm trying to make, making sure every word means exactly what I'm trying to convey. I spend a lot of time taking something that I may write as a rough draft that could be 1,000 or 2,000 words, and I will set targets, and it's similar to how I edit my videos. And I'm sure some of y'all have seen it where it'll be, let's say, 10 minutes long after the rough cut. And then I'll be like, oh, I want to try to get it down to like 7 or 6 minutes. It's the same thing with my writing. I'll have a rough draft. All right, it's about 1,500 words. Can I get it to 1,000? Once I get it to 1,000, can I get this same message across in under 1,000? And so I'll, rewrite stuff just so I can get to that point. But, that takes time. And I guess people, it's not just that it takes time. It takes thought and effort and all of the things that people don't want to expend. Let's see here. It seems like you were talking about a lot of dumb things happening in companies. The opportunities come from recognizing the stupid and delivering better. Maybe, within companies, the thing is that most of it is just relationships. I am convinced after working in industry for about 15 years that no one really cares about quality per se. That's not the number one priority. A lot of times it's just money, like, does it make money? We don't need the best quality. And I understand that too, because, that's something that I had to work on when I was trying to do my own thing, is that, like, I can't only focus on quality because my users don't give a shit. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on what your perspective is. If someone has a problem and you have a solution, it doesn't matter if your solution is perfect or not. What matters is if your solution solves their problem and adds value. That's really it. So I get it. That's why I say, like, I kind of flow back and forth where I'm like, I understand what the business types, what they're looking at. And I also understand what the engineers and how they're thinking and what they're looking at. And I also understand what the creatives and like what they're thinking and how they're looking at things. I get it. They're often at odds. It's very rare that they're all going to be on the same page. Oh, you thought that money, in your head, money and quality are highly correlated. Okay, well, here, let me show you an example. I was just talking about this thing called proof by contradiction. Let me show you something interesting. Let's go to Amazon.com. This is a website that is known to be a fairly low quality user experience. Well, UI, how about that? I'm gonna say UI. The user experience, it accomplishes the goals that they want. It allows you to buy something. If that's the primary experience they're trying to deliver, it's pretty decent. But have you ever gone, well, I don't know if I want to go through all of that. Not my own thing. But have you ever like gone through AWS? Have you seen what that's like? What that's like to use? Or what about Azure? Or have you ever administered a network like for IT stuff like that, like computers that are on Windows? All of the tools that exist for Windows and administrating, a work group. It's not great. What about me always complaining about how trash Apple software is? Apple's one of the most valuable companies, but their software is not that great. Yet they're still one of the most valuable companies. There are a lot of things like that. Things that are, they print money, but the quality isn't there, but they still print money. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. You're thinking quality of when it comes to solving the customer issues. Well, I mean, even that. Have you heard of Salesforce? Have you ever used Salesforce? That solves customer, problems, but Well, no, like name a person who loves using Salesforce. Salesforce is what people use because they're paid to use it. Or how about Oracle? You know, there are a lot of Oracle database systems, you know, things that are built on top of it. Trash. Print money. So, yeah. Yeah, you use AWS all the time. Yeah, AWS is trash, bro. It's not just the UI that's bad. It's a lot of things that are bad. Can you calculate how much your bill is going to be before you do something on AWS? Just out of curiosity, do you know the cost of anything on AWS? And I'm not saying that facetiously. I mean, like, can you go out and say, all right, this will cost me this on AWS? That seems like a fairly important thing for your customers to know. At least to me it is. But as far as I know, that's impossible to do on AWS. Maybe they've changed it in the past few months. I don't think they have, though.
Very, very far away from that. You can check the other videos we have on the channel where we deep dive into the actual effectiveness of those coding models. But as of now, AI can write code, it can generate code, but it can't build software. And a good question that you can ask yourself, if you really think AI can replace you, it's if you leave tomorrow, how expensive would it be to replace you? Can your company get things done by using AI instead of your skills? The answer will probably be no. Secondly, remember that giving in to these demands, it's really a race to the bottom. Because first they ask you to implement their AI suggestions, then they ask you to fix them, then they ask you to stay over the weekend and make sure you deploy them. So you gotta stop at some point, which brings us to the second point in this video. You gotta set boundaries and teach people how to treat you. And the best way to do that is, of course, to use AI tools and to ride the wave, but to write your own code. You don't want to come across as this grumpy developer.
This right here, it sounds good in principle, you know, like teach people how to treat you. I don't know. Like the thing is that you teach people the first time they meet you. It's like you establish things from the get-go. So unless you're just that kind of person where you're just like from the get-go, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm tolerating, like it's unlikely you're going to start teaching people if you're already in your position. You can only do that if you go somewhere new. Because once you allow something, well, you have effectively taught everyone else that that's something that you're going to allow. And you can't just go and say, I'm not going to allow it anymore. I mean, you can, but you know, you likely don't have as much leverage as you think you have. That's one thing that, you know, I understand because I've been on both sides, is that employees often overestimate their value. Maybe that's a hot take.
Who doesn't want to learn anything new. You want to know the AI tools your CEO or the people around you use, the AI coding tools, better than they do. And to also, very important, understand their limitations. So when people come and approach you and ask you, hey, we could do this, you can actually make them see the flaws in their solutions. One thing you can do here is to really call AI by its name. So when people refer to it as AI, always make sure you bring in the view of a large language model, that it's statistically generating code and that has a very limited context window, not only in the terms of the context of your code base, but the non-linguistical understanding of the word.
I get what he's trying to say, but I think he's assuming that everyone else is nuanced and understands the differences like he does. I have heard people use LLM and AI interchangeably, as if it's the same thing. Large language models are under the umbrella of AI. And just like with anything that exists under the umbrella of some other thing, people will often conflate the two. Here's a great example: computer science and software engineering. A lot of people seem to think that they're the same thing. Programming and coding, a lot of people seem to think that they are the same thing. It's no use in arguing with people and trying to be like, oh, that's not the case, because, well, not everybody cares about the differences of like the meaning of words like that. You might get called pedantic, if you're out here trying to have these nuanced conversations using the words and what they mean, and you're talking to someone who doesn't know the difference or even care what the difference is. I'm not sure which is spicy, but maybe I've hired people. It's, a lot of people overestimate the value that they add. Put it another way, or said another way, chances are if you've got hired to a company, that company existed before you. So how much value like can you really be bringing? Like the company was making money before you came. It's just it's like effectively you are labor. And I'm not saying that it's not valuable, but it's like don't overestimate the value because labor is often fungible. And how do I know that? Well, if you've ever been let go and you notice that the company continues on without you, that should be a very strong indicator that you weren't as valuable as you thought you were. Or maybe you know that you're not that valuable and you operate accordingly. That's generally how I operate because I already know, like in corporate, everyone's replaceable. And what that means is that you're not as valuable as you think because everyone's replaceable. So if you go in with that understanding that, oh, like I'm just a cog in the machine, I'm gonna just do my little function and move on, then it could work out in your best interest. Let's see here. And they say in the same place for years because of it. I feel like I see way more undervalue themselves. Well, here's the thing. If you really want to understand what you're worth in the market, go out and create your own business. That's how you will determine how much you're really worth, how valuable you are. Is if you go out into the world and you create all of that stuff yourself. If you're not doing that, then you're, quite frankly, you're just not as valuable as you think you are. But, you know, you can go and find out. Quit your job today and go see how valuable you are. How do you properly estimate your value? I think I answered that. You go and you build a company. You be the one who goes out and creates something from nothing, and you secure cash flows and you go out and hire people. Well, that's a pretty good indicator of your value because at one point there was zero money, $0. And then over a course of 5 or 10 years, there's tens of millions or hundreds of dollars. And all of a sudden you have dozens or hundreds of employees who you're responsible for making sure that they can go out and live their lives. If I saved the company $1 million in compute costs, does that make me $1 million? No, it doesn't. It makes you a good employee. You did your job. That's what you were hired to do. Straight up. Like, how do you even know that you truly saved them $1 million? Are you familiar with the books? Are you a finance expert? Do they give you access to their accounts, to their books? I'm curious. When you save a company money, like do you get paid from savings or do you get paid from revenue? It's been my understanding that revenue is what pays people, not saving money. I would say that even as an engineer, you are less valuable than the sales team because the sales team actually brings in money to the organization. The engineering team, they don't really bring in the money. Now, that's not to say that they don't have any value, but it is to say that, you know, the people who bring in the revenue generators, that's the most valuable people. And whether that be sales, whether that be the folks who are figuring out the strategy for where they need to go in the market, even marketing, they bring in more value because, well, they're bringing in potential leads. Well, not potential, but they're bringing in leads. You know, like they're making sure people know that they exist, which brings in revenue. Engineering is downstream of revenue. And yeah, you know, I understand. I mean, as an engineer, like it's important to know that you are essentially a cost. You're not a revenue generator.
And when you embrace those tools, but bring this new perspective of an expert and an
Oh,
engineer.
hold on, my bad. I just said. Oh, and the value is based on. I would just be honest. Like, how much money do you make me? How much richer do you make me? That's your value. That's it. I pay you $100,000. How much richer do you make me? That's the value. Nothing more. So yeah, maybe it's a cutthroat way to look at it, but it's just business.
That knows how to use these tools, it will be extremely hard for them to push you or tag you as someone that's opposing change or not flexible. The second thing you can do is to put the responsibility on them. Right? If someone comes to you with a code snippet that they got from ChatGPT, then invite them to push it themselves. Exactly.
No, I think you may be misunderstanding what a revenue generator is. A revenue generator is a person who goes out and they retrieve revenue. They go out and get sales. You go to another human at another organization and you convince them to give you money for your organization. That's a revenue generator. You don't create a revenue generator. That's not how it works. Like, most things don't sell themselves. Now, over time, you know, if you get market dominance, yeah, it could be something that kind of sells itself, but in reality, nothing really sells itself. If it did, we wouldn't have marketing teams nonstop. We wouldn't have sales teams nonstop. If we can really just go out and create something and it just generates revenue. Now, it would be nice. I would love that. You know, like, as an engineer, I would love to be able to just go and build something and then just expect revenue to come in. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. Someone has to go out and make calls and write emails and talk to people and get orders signed. Essentially, you need to get signatures, you know, contracts signed. Someone needs to do that. So yes, if you go out and you're the one who's securing those deals, then yes, you are bringing in $1 million. Now, are you worth that? To be determined. You know, just because you do something for a little bit, like, okay, well, are you going to do it year over year? And if so, is it going to increase? And are there any other people who are consuming the same amount of resources as you, who are doing more? Let's say that, you know, you're out here bringing in $1 million to your organization a year, and you're being paid $100,000 a year to do it. Well, if somebody else is bringing in $1.2 million and they're only being paid $80,000 to do it, well, the person who's making $80,000 is more valuable. Even if they're bringing in the same amount of money, they're more valuable. You know, I'm able to get more with less. You know, imagine if it were your money, like, you know, you can give 2 people $100, and then at the end of the month, one person comes back and they give you $120, and the other person comes back and gives you $150. Which one's more valuable? Or let's make it the same, right? Let's say you give one person $100 and you give another person $50. And then at the end of the month, they both come back with $150. Who is more valuable to you? If you remove all of the human emotion, all that bullshit, and you just do the math, return on investment, one investment is $50 and you get back $150. One investment is $100 and you get back $150. One is a 300%. Well, it's 250%. Well, we'll say this one is 300%. The other one is 150%. Or I'm sorry, 50%. What did I say? Not 300. I'm sorry, 150%. My bad. I don't know what I'm doing. You see what I mean? Like, one is more valuable than the other because, well, my return on investment is higher. This is likely what your business leaders are looking at. They don't really give a shit about anything else. They're looking at spreadsheets. They're looking at units of cost and then units of revenue. And unfortunately, engineering does not result in units of revenue. It's downstream. So, you know, it's generally the salespeople, which is why you can make a shit ton of money in sales. But sales is also something where you quickly understand how valuable you are because you're often being compared to every other salesperson in the organization. So you know where you stand, you know?
You want to really give it back to them in a way, in a very polite way, because once you say yes, it will be on you to make that code work. And I can promise you that no matter how good that looks like, and even if it works, tomorrow you'll have them again at your table, second guessing everything you're doing and creating extra work for you. So you need to gently remind them that you are committed to the code base. It has to be reviewed. It has to be checked on how it integrates. It has to be tested. And sure, we can use AI for suggestions, but there's a difference between a suggestion and the actual implementation. And if they really want to implement that solution that GPT gave them so brilliantly, you can invite them to check out from the master branch and give it a shot to production and live with the consequences of their choice.
And remember that your problem is not AI. Your problem, it's probably your manager and your lack of options. Which brings us to the third point. You got to build leverage. And if you can, you have to switch companies. If you cannot switch companies, because
That's really your only leverage at the end of the day. It's like, go somewhere else. Now, that's easier said than done, but, you know, that's really the only leverage you have, is to go somewhere else. Because as I stated earlier, if you work in a corporation or a company or anything like that, like, you're replaceable. And if you ever build a company, you will spend a lot of time understanding that you have no control over whether your employees leave or not. Like, you know, sure, you can fire them, but they can also leave at any point. So you're going to have to be forced to make sure that all of the roles and functions that you have within your company are resilient to people leaving. AKA, you're going to have to make sure that everyone is replaceable, because you can't have your business stop, like your operations can't stop just because, you know, one of your engineers leaves. So that's one of the things that, you know, I realize it's just a lot of work, a lot of effort to build processes and workflows and systems and like procedures and all this. Like, there's a lot of stuff that, you know, you don't think about because you've probably never done it.
you struggle with technical interviews, like a lot of developers do, you have to upgrade your skills.
Yeah, exactly, Dragos. And this is something that we advise people to do.
I love how you think that you can't sell something without a product, when there is a guy that just a few months ago that somehow managed to raise $1 billion with no product. You know how many investors invest in teams that don't have a product? Are you just not thinking right now? Most startups that exist when they raise money don't have a product. Yet they're able to sell a vision of a product. So you don't have to have a product to sell something. I don't know. Like, maybe, I guess maybe theoretically, but no, not in reality. You don't need to have a product to sell something. You can sell an idea.
Regardless of AI or no AI, which is focus on yourself, build valuable skills, and make sure you're always in a very good position and you stay in a place because you like them, you like the team, you like how you're being treated, you're getting paid well, not because you're afraid you want to do better. You know, people that have been into the market and they're telling you, oh, the market is not good. You really want to always operate from a position of power and of abundance, not scarcity.
Maybe it sounds a bit nihilistic, but you have to need your company less than they need you. They need your skills more than you need their money because you've got options. And if you're looking to improve your skills, the best way is for you to understand your technical gaps first, which is why Bogdan and I at the Senior Dev created this free 10 minutes technical assessment for JavaScript engineers. I invite you to go ahead and take it.
Wait, we're at a point now where we have JavaScript engineers? The hell is a JavaScript engineer? Is that the people who make JavaScript language? That would only be a couple companies that build compilers and runtime. Well, I guess not compilers, but runtimes for Java. And they're mostly browser-based companies. Who the hell would be a Java? That doesn't even make sense.
About 50. Oh, just like this New York Times column claims, chief executives are also vulnerable to the same forces buffeting their employees. On to point number 2, metastatic code. What do we actually
Wait.
Same forces your CEO? Just like this New York Times column claims, chief executives are also vulnerable to the same forces buffeting their employees.
I think that it's more likely the case that an AI could replace a CEO eventually. Like CEOs of mature companies that, you know, everything is already set up, maybe. But I don't really think so. Just understanding what CEOs do. I think there's a real lack of understanding of what CEOs do. I'm not saying all CEOs, right? I'm saying that a lot of other CEOs, like strategy, for instance, like long-term things, where it's creativity essentially. Kind of what I was saying earlier. It basically is art at a certain point. Yes, there's management science, you know, like all the analysis and all that kind of crap. Sure, there's all that. And yeah, there's, you know, going to all your different business leaders and understanding what problems they're facing and where they are. I understand that, but you're also talking to customers and potential customers. And I don't know if AI is capable of doing that. I can say for sure that if the CEO of a company was an AI, I would not be interested in dealing with that company because I'm more interested in relationships. I have zero interest in having a relationship with an AI, with a fucking computer, especially a computer that I don't own, that's not on my desk. The only relationship with a computer I have is the one that's on my desk. And even then, it's not that strong of a relationship. Well, it does have a name, but I don't call it by its name. It's just Mac Studio, and it's going to be replaced at some point when it stops meeting my needs.
Employees. On to point number 2, metastatic code. What do we actually mean by this?
Well, we are seeing all these performance benchmarks where AI is really good at solving code forces or lead code style of problems and even close some issues on Python repositories from Git. But very few people talk about the long-term effects of adding generative code with large language models to a code base. And what we see is
my issue with that is that people who do that it seems like they're just immature developers. Like every line of code that you add to a code base is going to be maintained by someone, or that's what you should be thinking. So you shouldn't just allow anything into your code base because like it needs to be maintained. And if you're just putting a bunch of slop AI shit in there, well, maintenance that's not done over a long period of time is going to build up. You're going to build up technical debt. And you can't always just rewrite, you know, like I think that's how a lot of people like to solve technical debt. But if you have a product that has customers and people are using it, you can't just rewrite. Like that's silly. So you always got to be thinking about the maintenance, the maintainability of what you're adding to your repositories. And you have to also make sure that things continue to work. Like, I mean, unfortunately, due to how our supply chains are in software, everything is always changing. So you're kind of forced to always be keeping things up to date. You know, APIs change, libraries get deprecated, the frameworks or the runtimes or the compilers are being updated. You know, there are bugs that are being fixed, not even within your code, but bugs within the libraries that you depend on. That kind of stuff is being fixed. The platforms in which you deploy to are constantly changing. Maintenance is a real thing, and if you're not thinking about that, man, you're doing it wrong.
Cancer-like effect where the code starts growing exponentially, but the value of the overall code base decreases. You get a lot of repeated code, you get a lack of coherence in the style of how code is written, and really it feels like tumors that are growing and growing in your code base, and all of a sudden you need a lot more code to do the same or even less functionality. And remember, the number of bugs is proportional to the size of the code base, and so is the debugging time it takes to fix those bugs. So having a big code base, it's something developers work very.
He's right. It is proportional, but I would have liked if he would have made a stronger claim and attempted to define like what that proportion is. Is it exponential? It's not logarithmic. I know that. But like, is it exponentially harder? Is it like linear? It's not linear. I think it's in between linear and exponential. It may not be truly exponential. Well, if it is an exponent, it's a smaller exponent, but it's something that does increase faster with the amount of code. So the growth of bugs and errors, it grows faster than the amount of code that you add. So I would have liked him to have tried to, specify what that relationship is. And I'm sure we can go and find it, but I'm lazy. I don't want to go do that.
very hard to avoid because they're extremely hard to manage, and it's only getting worse with AI.
We've got a good example of this where this developer is tired of hearing Copilot suggested this at work. It seems here that it's becoming frustrating when they're looking into a PR, and when they ask the developer who wrote it, they say, hey, it's because Copilot suggested that. And of course, the suggested code is garbage. And this is very funny because it's not even only juniors, it's people who have about 10 to 15 years of experience. Those are seasoned developers who are actually defaulting on GPT to write their code. Very funny because this developer was not expecting LLMs to make their life miserable so quickly. And now it's not because they're afraid of being laid off, but because their colleagues think that LLMs are much more useful than they are in practice. And as Bogdan suggested, we have this metastatic code that's being created mainly due to breadcrumb coding and prompt-to-prompt development, where developers almost fully delegate the coding to AI, blindly following what it spits out, resulting in pull requests that become literally hell, full of AI-generated code, where you basically don't know what's AI and what's not.
Exactly. And so
This is where I realized that I'm out of touch, because I didn't know people were doing this. I would feel a certain kind of way if I'm on a team and people are out here telling me, oh, well, AI, LLM, I would be like, what the hell? Like, I don't know if I want to work alongside people who just delegate all of their thinking and problem solving to a machine, because these machines are only as good as what they've been trained on. And if you've been in any corporate environment, even some of the big companies who you may respect a lot, especially when they're not doing open source stuff, the quality of code, in my opinion, is abysmal. Not all the time, but it's never as great as you think it would be. You know, it's generally a freaking mess. That was one of my that's one of the first things I realized when I got into the real world. You know, I'm in college this whole time and we're learning about all these practices and how you're supposed to do stuff, how you're supposed to test for things. Yeah, I did computer science, so it's different from engineering, but it's still the same, right? Like, I'm thinking that there's like these hardcore processes for engineering and all that kind of stuff, and then I get into the real world and it's just like, no, we don't do any of that. It's just I was amazed. I was like, oh my gosh. But you know, you adapt.
So it's so much easier to write a lot of code, especially when you have the context around it, that of course, some developers are tempted to just outsource their job to GPT and use GPT to create the PRs. Now, to an experienced developer, that kind of AI code, it's very easy to spot. In the same way, it's extremely easy to spot if an article was written with GPT or not. It's usually very, very verbose. It's usually off point, or it's way too complex.
And this
Yeah, he did say it, verbose, complex, or off top. Yeah. Yeah.
is a tumor that keeps on growing. It is very easy. When this kind of behavior becomes the standard in the development team, it's very easy for the code base to get bloated and become full of deadweight code, meaning your cost of change will literally go to the roof, which is the exact opposite effect that AI was intended to have.
Exactly. So we see a lot of companies like GitHub or Google claiming that 25% of their code was written by AI, which is a very dangerous thing because a lot of the AI generated code, it's redundant and it gets exponentially more expensive to keep writing your code with AI. The more tokens you feed to the model, the more expensive it is to get an answer back, and the more tokens you're getting back. And so you get into this vicious circle of more code, more bugs, more need for regression testing, harder to separate boundaries, no modularity, and so on. And remember, it's all because it's extremely easy to generate code with AI, but it's extremely hard once you have a certain code base to make sure that you can extend it in a healthy, high quality way that avoids bugs and delivers value.
And we are getting what we call to a Babel Tower effect. If you remember this ancient tale where supposedly God changed the language of people and nobody could understand anybody, and that's why the whole city and the whole tower went down. And that's exactly what's happening in development teams, where you start having no coherent view of the system, you start accumulating tech debt, you have a lack of uniformity in the coding standards and the code itself. Do not repeat yourself, dry does not apply anymore, and you see people trying to reinvent the wheel. As a result, your bug density increases, you see frequent rollbacks, and you've got more customer complaints.
Exactly, and this is nothing new. You used to have a lot of difficulties in development teams because everybody will join and they have their own opinions on how code should be written. That's why we have things like the linter or prettier in TypeScript, trying to set some discipline on how we write code and reach consensus, because we reduce the scope of decisions that we need to make as a team. The style of the code is already decided, the type checking is already in place, and so this is what best practices try to do. They try to take everybody's effort and make sure they work with each other, not against each other. But because everybody now is using this echo chamber for code writing that amplifies whatever you feed to it, the code base looks like it was written by 5 different development teams.
One thing that I don't know if I agree with fully, but I'm thinking about it a little bit differently, It's the bug increases, frequent rollbacks, and specifically the more customer complaints. I don't know, and here's why. I think that people's standards are on the decline, like what they expect. So as people's standards go down, like, are they going to complain? Maybe they will. I don't know. Maybe they'll have AI do all the complaining for them. Never mind. I was thinking about it a little bit too meta, maybe.
Talking about development teams, this also has an impact on the team itself, where you see AI-generated conflicts in the team. Developers cannot tell if their colleague was the one actually writing that piece of code or if it was actually AI and they just copy-paste. And finally, the developers will have to check all the work because someone has to check when defects appear, what happened here, are getting into a burnout because they have more code to review than ever. And
no, you don't, because he just said that if AI is doing the code review, AI is doing the PR. It's like, yeah, at a certain point, let's just have AI pay you. That's the part that's short-sighted to me, is that at a certain point, yeah, we're going to replace everyone with AI, but okay, well, is AI going to grow your food and pull it out of the dirt for you and ship it to you and cook it for you? Is AI going to go out to the Gulf of Mexico and drill for oil for you and somehow get it from point A to point B for you? I don't think so. Right? So it's just like, if we do AI everything, at a certain point, well, are we just going to have AI be the ones who pay for everything? I don't think, shareholders want AI to pay them, because as far as I understand, AI cost, it doesn't generate money. The only thing that it really does is it reduces cost by removing labor. And it's sold to you under the guise of we're making things more efficient. But in reality, it's just it's here to try to replace you and me, I suppose.
And the other ones are falling into passivity, where it's just, hey, let me use AI and not be very proactive about the job itself.
This is coasting to the square.
Powered by AI. So what's the solution to this? And what can you do if you find yourself in such a team that's creating metastatic code? First of all, you gotta break the cycle, and you do so by enforcing responsibility. So regardless of whether the code is AI generated or not, if it's your pull request, it's your code.
Exactly, the option. I think we will see a lot of development on all the observability tools, where you will be able to relate a certain bug with a certain commit, which traces back to a specific person. And I think
you can already do that. What are you talking about? Like, what? There's this thing that, I don't know, it's existed forever, as far as I know. Let's see if I finally fixed my computer last night. I restarted it and everything just worked. So I guess I didn't fix it. I just restarted it in magic. So let's just open up one of these things right here. We'll go to the desktop. Oops. We'll use this IDE to open it. Okay. All right. Let me see if I can turn on Get Blame. I turned it off for certain things. Yeah, because it's noisy sometimes. See this? I know exactly who wrote what. So tidydev did that. Let's go to summon lib. Look at some Git stuff. We can see who wrote everything here, right? Line by line. And I know the PR it was merged in. And because I know the PR it was merged in, I know the commit saw. So I don't understand what he's talking about. We'll have tools. Like, we've had these tools for like 20 years. Like, what are you talking about? Did you watch the Firefox video from your after hours list yet? No, I haven't. I have not yet. Nah, I'm only on video number 2. And honestly, I'm not even going in an order, really. I started off with the one that someone shared, the Jordan Peterson video, and now I'm on this AI video just randomly. And I'll maybe do another video. We'll see. I'm hungry. I haven't eaten today. So I went to the grocery store. Here, I want to show y'all this right quick. I know it's off. It has nothing to do with anything. But I'm assuming that y'all don't really care that much about what I'm doing right now. But check this out. Look at how tiny these pieces of broccoli are. Now, I'm just curious. Put it in the chat, okay? How much do you think this tiny little piece of broccoli is? The tiny crown of broccoli. It's not even the full thing. It's a crown. Like, how much do you think that costs? It might be a little overexposed. This HDR. I apologize for that, but watch it. I mean, honestly, my phone records in HDR. Okay, now you're over. You're way over. But I'll show it to you. Look at this. Look how small it is. It's $1.28 for a small ass piece of broccoli. Not even a full thing of broccoli. I remember when the full thing of broccoli was like a few cents, like 50 cents, something like that. Now it's a whole $1.28. It used to be for the whole, like normally a crown would be like the 3 pieces, and then you get like 3 of those. Yeah. And all right, so here's another one. You see the price, so I can't really. These watermelons, basically $9 for a watermelon. Now I understand it's not watermelon season yet and all that kind of crap, but still, I'll figure out what they cost during watermelon season. Normally, I just drive a little bit north because we grow watermelons here. So maybe I'll see what they cost a little bit later, but damn near $9. And I'm just curious. This is what I got today. I went to the grocery store because I needed to cook food, and I realized I was out of certain things, specifically some potatoes. I only have 1 left. So I was like, let me go to the store right quick, get some fruit and some stuff. How much do you think this costs? Just this little thing right here. There are 5 apples, 5 oranges, 5 little potatoes here, 2 pounds of raisins, and 3 Asian pears, and a pint of blueberries. I'm not going to wait. I don't feel like waiting. I'll just show you what it costs. $60. For some fruit and vegetables and some raisins, which I guess technically is a fruit, but hey, $60. I don't know, man. Yeah, indeed. I'm just like, I don't know. Oh, here's some random thing. I guess I won't show you that because you may see the license plate. I don't want to show that, but somebody got a new Spectre here. I was just like, I'll buy one of these when they're 70% off in a year or two because of electric. Electric vehicles don't keep their value at all. So I'm like, I can get one of these, at a huge discount in a couple years because all this EV crap, the value of them tanks. I'm actually surprised someone here bought one. I'm like very surprised. I have somebody here who's one of my neighbors. He's like, I'm going to give him. I'm like, nah, you should avoid that. Like, nah, keep your money. That's not the one.
There will be a lot more transparency and visibility, but also a lot more of responsibility at the individual level, because if you break production, it will be very visible that it was your commit. And if the other engineers see that you did break production with AI-generated code, I think your reputation in the team will evaporate.
So kind of using AI without thinking will be somehow penalized. Then this brings us to the second point, which is encouraging public live code reviews, where people have to basically explain their code in front of their peers, which automatically
How the people don't do that already? I'm convinced that because I came from a superior engineering org, I'm just out of touch with how regular engineering orgs operate. I thought that this is how things happen. In fact, the last major project, software, other than what I did myself, was public. Everything that I did, you can see it. Every issue I wrote, every pull request, every review that I did, you can see it all. It's all there. And even my code reviews, all of that, you can see it. All the comments, all the back and forth, all of that, it's you can see it. I thought that's how engineering teams worked, but I guess not.
reinforces responsibility. Yeah, so imagine you are a CTO or an engineering manager. You really need a good engineer to help you out with a real project, with a big project. You'd really want to know that that person can code live. And as an engineering manager, if I'd be an engineering manager today, the first thing I would add would be public live code reviews, where we gather as a team and we review some PRs together live. And I'm sure people will be a lot more careful about what they commit to the code base when they have to explain why they did it to all their colleagues.
And finally, you have to limit, if you can, the size of your PRs.
Exactly. So when you limit the PI size and at the same time you enforce
they're basically just saying, are they just not figuring this out? This is something that I was under the impression that you should be doing back in 2015. Now that may not mean much to you, but 2015 is about 3-ish years after I graduated. I thought this was common knowledge, and it's interesting to me that this is not common knowledge, and these aren't things that people do. That's
Sure, someone could go and try to prompt GPT for a smaller solution, for a more implicit solution, but usually those solutions are very complex. That's why it's a lot harder to understand, for example, what a functional programming snippet does. It's a lot harder to explain React hooks because they are implicit. And so it's this combination of you are responsible and we need to write elegant small code that actually solves the problem that will actually leave people with no other option than write high quality code.
Which also brings us to the second point, and that is get insanely good at debugging. This means get to know the good old IDE debugging, browser debugging, logging, monitoring, and alerting techniques, as well as logging, monitoring, and alerting techniques.
Good old IDE debugging. Yeah. If you need an IDE to do debugging, I'm going to say you're probably just incompetent. Real talk. Like, you need to go beyond your IDE. Like, come on, seriously. Maybe I'm saying this because I'm really good at debugging, and that's mostly because one of the things that I have on I won't say where I have it, but I have it publicly, is like sometimes I build things and sometimes they work. I like to tell people that I spend way more time debugging things than I do actually writing things. Now, that's not to say that I'm debugging my own code. It's to say that I'm insanely good at figuring out why something isn't working the way that it's meant to be working based off of a specification. It's something I often did at the previous place that I was at. I didn't write any of that code. When something didn't work, I can go out and figure out exactly why it didn't work, what's broken, what the implications are, what they need to go to do to fix it. And here's your report. Go fix it. I thought that these were things that were normal until, a little bit later on, I've started to realize that people just suck at a lot of things. People are not very good at their jobs. And that's just as a whole. Most people are barely adequate at their jobs, which is probably the reason why, there's been this big push for AI, because, if people are barely adequate, then, well, AI is also barely adequate, except it's cheaper.
Exactly, because bigger code bases will result in a lot of bugs. Unskilled
Oh,
developers.
hold on. I was about to show y'all something, I think. Is it going to work? No, it's not going to work. What about GDB? Is this going to work? No, that's not going to work either. Why is it? The fuck? This will work. I don't have anything to attach it to. This is LLVM, like you could debug anything that's built on top of LLVM. I think I'm saying that right. LLVM. Oh gosh, I had to go and check to make sure. Here I am. I know commands, but yeah, LLVM. So anything that's that targets this, you can use that. There's also the GDB, which for whatever reason is not coming up, but that's the GNU C++ debugger. There's NDB. Oh, you know what? I don't think I have it globally. I think I have it per project. NDB is the node debugger, so you can hop into the node debugger and do stuff there. Obviously C# and all the CLR crap, they have their own debuggers. With the LLVM debugger, you can also target Swift, because Swift is LLVM. Not Rust. What's the word? Gosh, what's that language? Julia. Have you ever heard of Julia? You can target it with that. I would offer to do videos on that, but honestly, after the few JavaScript videos that I did years ago that still haven't broken 30 views, I'm reticent to create that type of content again. Because I was going to do a whole thing where it's like I go over the language, I go over how you debug things, like strategies and all that for debugging things, how to use the browser debugger, because there's also a browser debugger. Not just the one that you may be used to. There's more to it than just hitting F12 and then coming into here to your sources and then putting a breakpoint. There's way more to it than that. All kinds of little tricks. Yeah, who knows? Maybe in the future, I'll have something where I have a group of people who's like, it's like a Patreon, maybe, I'll do that kind of stuff in a Patreon if I end up doing that.
That committed code they didn't actually wrote will be not capable of solving it, and that's when you can actually shine. Because when these bugs happen in production, you really need someone that knows what they're doing. And guess who will be able to jump into the code, figure their way out around all these files of code and actually find a problem fast? That will be not someone that's working with GPT and prompting it or generating their code with Copilot. It will be someone that really knows what they're doing.
And finally, you have to learn proven problem-solving principles and fundamentals. It's so easy to generate code these days that it is crucial for you to be able to identify what is bad code and what is good code. And for that, just like in philosophy, we have the Occam razor, for example, we have thinking, we have reasoning principles. You need programming principles in coding, such as dry, solid, the single record principle, for you to be able to quickly identify what is.
Man, I understand. Like, I think a lot of these things are applied dogmatically. I mean, solid principles, sure, kind of, but I think a lot of times people just say it. I'm not saying they are just saying it, but I've seen a lot of people, they'll talk about these things and it's like the stuff that they build is still not that good. It's like, yeah, I understand dry and solid and all that other kind of BS, but I don't know. I think it's mostly a waste of time thinking or talking about that, because for one, each one of these assumes that you are in an object-oriented programming language, which maybe you're not. A lot of languages are general purpose, like they fall within multiple paradigms. You can do things that are procedural. You could do things that are functional. You can do things that are object-oriented. You could do things that are aspect-oriented. Like, there are all these different paradigms that you can write in, because a paradigm is just a way of approaching the problem, really. So you can pretty much accomplish all of these things in most languages, except for functional. You need some requirements to be met for functional. But like solid, if you're in a functional programming language, like what is that doing for you? Like, why do you need the links of substitution principle in functional programming? It's kind of built in. You just have a function, right? Like, you don't need any of that. I don't like best practices, because a lot of people, they just go around parroting the word best practice. And I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Good code and what is AI generated nonsense.
Exactly. And this goes back to what we already mentioned, which was the breadcrumb coding, the prompt by prompt coding. If you use mental models and principles, you will be able to find your way very quickly to dozens of modules or even microservices and be able to come up with solutions very quickly. And that's something that AI cannot do. And this is by design. Again, these models are always predicting the next token. It's extremely hard for a model to think in terms of systems, even if the model developers like OpenAI are trying to prove differently. And so if you invest in those mental models, fundamentals, and then you get really good at debugging, and you are really responsible for the code you push, you will see an increase of your effectiveness. So maybe you don't commit as many lines of code as your colleagues, but you are much faster and you deliver higher quality.
On to point number 3, zero trust technical interviews, which feel more like an interrogation. And
all right, I don't care about this zero trust technical. The way I've interviewed has always been that way. Where I remember one of my interviews was just like, come in, whiteboard, problem, solve it. No, you don't need a computer. You write your code on the board. And there's 6 other people there, and they're all just staring, and then you write your solution, and then they pick it apart, and then they'll add other scenarios. So like, well, what about this scenario? It's like you got to go in and So I'm kind of used to that. So I don't know. We're gonna move on. Maybe. Oh, I've been here for 2 hours. All right. So before I move on, because I may just go cook my food and eat and go to sleep. So is there anybody here? No, anybody here? I only see two thumbs up, 2 likes. So I'm assuming there are only 2 people here. So if there's not anyone here, I'm gonna dip and go eat. Yeah, I gave this a like. Perfect. Yeah, you can find this video if whoever's watching. You can go find it on the After Hours Live. It's called "How AI Ruined Software Development," or you could just just go type that into your search box. And if you want to watch the rest, I would encourage you to go watch the rest and leave a comment if you have thoughts. A fourth twist. Okay. Where is my mouse? What the hell? My mouse just disappeared. I don't know where my mouse is. Oh shit. I don't know why, man, this pisses me off. My mouse somehow went to my iPad. I don't know how to get it off the iPad because what the fuck? Okay, so my mouse somehow went to my iPad. I don't know why. And I can't get it back to my computer. Why the fuck would I want my mouse on an iPad? Fuck. Okay, all right. I don't even know what to do. I legit don't know what to do. I don't know how this happened or why this is happening. Why would I want to use my mouse on an iPad when it's connected to my computer? All right, I'm gonna go. I think. Oh wait, maybe if I close the iPad, maybe. No, my mouse is still not on my. Oh, there it is. Okay, all right, there we go. Okay, I had to turn off my iPad. What the hell was that? I don't like that. Anyways, I'm gonna go. Y'all have a good night. Peace.